Okay, it is recording. Josh, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am ready.
I'm going to mute myself. I'll be handling the chat polls and Q&A if you need me. Go for it.
All right, so hi everyone, welcome. I hope we have pretty much everyone. I think it looks like it. So welcome to this first in our quarterly webinars on spotted lanternfly in Massachusetts. My name is Joshua Bruckner, and as Jen said, I am going to be handling the talk itself. So just kind of some of the rule stuff, just kind of go over it again. If you are taking this talk to get a pesticide credit, please make sure that you, when you registered, you submitted your email, your pesticide license, your Massachusetts pesticide license number, and your mailing address. If you haven't already done so, you can email it to me at joshua.bruckner@mass.gov so we can make sure you get your paperwork for the credits. If you're applying for credits for MCA, MCH, or MCLP, we've been approved for those too, so make sure you indicate that as well. Again, do make sure that you stay for the entire webinar and answer all the poll questions in order to make sure you get your credits. And we'll also be giving you information for our next upcoming sessions at the end of the webinar. So I'm just going to jump right into it. So these sessions are about the spotted lanternfly, which is also known as SLF. Its Latin name is Lycorma delicatula. It is in the order Hemiptera, which makes it a true bug. So despite its appearance, as you can see on the left, being kind of looks like a butterfly or a moth there, as a true bug, it is more closely related to things like stink bugs, aphids, assassin bugs, and cicadas. You can kind of see the body, the abdomen there kind of looks cicada-like. Kind of got cicada-like legs there, like a stink bug. So like a lot of true bugs, it is a sap sucker. It uses a proboscis to suck the sap from plants. And the spotted lanternfly has over 70 known host plants, including the tree of heaven, Ailanthus altisma, the black walnut, maple, grapes, apples, and hops. So you'll notice besides some shade trees, it also has some agricultural products, and that's why it is a pest of such concern. We'll go into that more, but this is not the kind of invasive pest that's going to necessarily be a harm to human health or to people's homes, or it is a pest of a lot of plants that we rely on for our environment and for our agriculture. So it is of course originally it is from East Asia, as are a lot of invasive insects that we deal with here. So for identification, and this is definitely important because you want to know what it looks like so you can report it if you find it. This is what it looks like in the adult stages. It is about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch long. So pretty good size. It has these gray spotted forewings. You can see in the photos with the wings are folded on the right side. And it has these very bright red hind wings. You can see in the bottom photo. That's usually, when you see photos of it, is how it's going to look with those spread wings. But it's not always going to look like that in the wild. Oftentimes, like on the pictures on the right, when it's at rest, the red hind wings are hidden, obscured a little bit. They sort of, you can kind of see them poking through. But you want to look for those gray mottled forewings as well. They have a black abdomen that in later stages of the adult life, especially the females, when they're grabbed with eggs, get these yellow bands on them. And unlike a butterfly or a moth, you'll notice they lack the prominent antennae. Those little orange dots that it has right under the eyes are the base of the antenna. So that's another way to identify it. But if you see something that looks somewhat like a butterfly or moth, check for the antenna, check for the coloration, and then for the legs as well. As I said, oftentimes when it is at rest, the wings are going to be folded, which actually gives it pretty good camouflage. As you can see here, those mottled forewings sort of let it blend into to tree bark here, to lichen. And it does tend to swarm. So that is another way to identify it, but it usually is pretty good camouflage. And as I said, it has a proboscis it uses to suck sap from the trees with. So that is what that proboscis looks like. You can see the proboscis is inserted directly into this branch or this twig, um, and you can also get a better look at those antennae right there, the little orange nubs under the eyes. So that's a pretty good look at the biology of the spotted lanternfly. Now, this is a look at the life cycle, and this is important because you need to know what stages of life are active at what time of the year, so you know what is around. So the eggs are laid in the late in the fall, and around this time of year is when the eggs begin to hatch. So the eggs have already hatched in southern warmer states, of course. Like with all insects, they need a certain amount of growing degree days in order to hatch and be viable. But when they first emerge, they're a very, very small nymph. This insect goes, like a lot of other true bugs, goes through what's called incomplete metamorphosis. So there's no pupal stage. There are nymphs that emerge that develop directly into the adult stage after going through a couple different instars or stages. So the nymphs get larger and larger. They are also they have proboscises, so they're sucking sap from plants. The fourth instar is active in July through September, becomes red. Uh, they become an adult starting around July, and that's when they start laying eggs. And the adults die off with the first hard frost before the eggs overwinter and then hatch again in the spring. So this is a photograph that shows you what those look like. You can see kind of the size difference, how very, very small the nymphs are when they first hatch. They're I don't know, probably about the size of a tick, maybe even smaller, before they get larger and larger. Again, the fourth instar is red, and then the adults get the distinct wings. So, what does the damage look like from these insects? So, as I said, they are sap-sucking insects. They use their proboscis to pierce through the either a leaf or a twig or the bark of a tree in order to get at the sap, which does a couple of things. So the spotted lanternfly cannot digest all of the sap it ingests, so it excretes a lot of it as a sticky waste called honeydew. You can see it building up the bottom of the tree there. That white stuff is all the honeydew, the sugary substance that they can't digest. And all of this does a couple of things. So first, repeated feeding from the tree reduces the sugar production in any fruit that the plant puts out, which for something like apples or grapes is a big deal. It reduces the tree's ability to undergo photosynthesis, so they can't produce as much food for themselves. It reduces the tree's hardiness, so they're less tolerant of cold, which means they're cold and diseases, so it weakens them quite significantly. And that honeydew running down the tree will attract nuisance insects like wasps, hornets, bees, and ants, and promote the growth of what's called sooty mold, and that's going to build up everywhere and it's going to kill whatever plant matter it's growing on. You can see the black stuff in this photo all on the ground, on the grass, the rocks. This branch is all sooty mold that has been growing from the honeydew, the white stuff that is all over the tree. So just imagine these situations where you have these like large trees, or in this case, a grapevine being fed upon by swarms of spotted lanternfly. The honeydew is raining down from all this repeated feeding, and then you have sooty mold growing all over the ground, all over your fruit products, all over the tree itself. This can also get on someone's back porch. This photo is from Pennsylvania, and kind of gives you an idea of just how indiscriminate the honeydew is. It can just get everywhere. Imagine this on someone's car, sidewalk, side of a house, in their backyard. And as I said, this insect will swarm in large numbers when there is an established population. So these photos are all from Pennsylvania, where there is a pretty bad established population of spotted lanternfly. There isn't one in Massachusetts yet. But again, in Pennsylvania, where it's been there since about 2014, they tend to swarm in large numbers when they find a host plant. You can see the ring of black sooty mold under the base of this tree, how thick the lanternfly can get when they're feeding off of a tree. And to really drive home what that looks like, we have this video from a resident in Pennsylvania of a pretty badly infested tree. Just take a look at what this looks like when the lanternfly is really established. That's a pretty dramatic example, but it shows you what the lanternfly is like when they really get going. So a brief history of lanternfly as it is in the United States. So of course, as an invasive species, it is native. It's not native here. It originally comes from East Asia, places like China and Korea. They were first discovered in the United States in Berks County, Pennsylvania in 2014. And based on the size of the population there, they had likely already been there since 2012. As is the case with a lot of invasive species, we often don't discover them until they've been here long enough that the population kind of becomes large enough to be noticeable. Um, so they have already spread since 2014 to 34 different Pennsylvania counties and 10 other states. A lot of different states have implemented quarantines to help halt the spread, but this is a pretty fast growing insect. This is the most current map of spotted lanternfly infestations and quarantines as available from New York IPM. This is a good website to go to kind of check periodically. I do suggest going there so you can kind of see how the lanternfly is spreading and where it has been found. That's the New York State Integrated Pest Management or New York IPM. Again, Berks County, Pennsylvania is kind of around Philadelphia, so sort of the southeast corner of Pennsylvania, and you can see in the since 2014 how far it has spread. There's 34 counties that are part of the Pennsylvania quarantine within that red line. It's also spread to New Jersey, and has quarantines there in 8 counties, to Delaware, Maryland, Virginia and West Virginia, Ohio. And although there's no quarantines in New York or Connecticut, there are established infestations, as well as you can look at the purple dots. Dead spotted lanternfly or single live adults have been found in a lot of other counties, but no established populations there. There's also been lanternfly found in North Carolina and Massachusetts. So this insect has spread pretty far since first being discovered 7 years ago. And so the question then is, how does it spread? So kind of the main way it can spread is through hitchhiking. That would be through the eggs and the adults. The egg masses, as you can see in this photo, can be laid on a lot of different flat surfaces. This looks like the side of like a picnic table or a box or some sort of structure. But the eggs can be laid on almost any flat surface. And you think about the number of things that are shipped in trains, trucks, or other vehicles, like firewood, packing crates, cars themselves, potted plants or other things that are sent to nurseries. As far as we know, lanternfly came to the U.S. because of a shipment of crushed paving stone that got sent to a nursery or garden center. So all it takes is kind of like one egg mass hiding underneath something that's shipped across state lines or country lines. So that's kind of a huge way that the insect can spread. The adults themselves are pretty good hitchhikers, and the nymphs, so they could hang on to the underside of a vehicle or some material that's shipped from one place to the other. The adults do have wings, of course, and they can fly, but they kind of tend to glide more. Like they have a habit of crawling up very, very tall structures, trees or poles or buildings, usually trees, and then gliding down them to get to something else. So the main way they do spread is hitchhiking rather than flying great distances. Tree of heaven can also form major pathways. This is their main host. As we'll go over, it is not their primary or sole host, but tree of heaven grows readily in disturbed areas. So lines of tree of heaven along major highways or train tracks can kind of form these pathways of a host tree for the lanternfly to kind of move along on their own. So a lot of different ways for the lanternfly to spread. And now we have come upon our first of a few poll questions. So that is going to show up on the screen.
All right, here we go.
And again, if you are taking this webinar for pesticide credits, please make sure you answer the question.
So the question you should see on your window right now is, why is spotted lanternfly considered such a destructive invasive pest? Is it the wide range of host plants, the waste it produces that promotes growth of sooty mold, the fact that no native predators are around to stop its growth, or all of the above? Please vote quickly so that we can move on. I see got about half of our audience has voted. Going to keep it up for another few seconds here. Also, Josh, I did want to ask you while people are voting, we do have Stephen House. I think that's, I have to check on how his last name is pronounced, who has joined us as a panelist from Delaware, who is going to show us some live feed of spotted lanternfly nymphs in Delaware. And I wanted to check in with you about whether it would make sense to do that after this poll question.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense before we kind of get into our next section of the presentation.
Okay, just a quick reminder to anyone who is seeking pesticide license credits: if you do not answer the polling questions, you will not be eligible for that credit. So I see 83% voted. I'm going to assume at this point that that people aren't looking for the credits if they haven't voted. Although I do see someone is asking that they can't vote from their phone. I did not. I'm going to have to look into how to resolve that. I saw Tawny's on the call, so I'm probably going to email her and ask her how she dealt with that. Sorry, Tawny. So, Mr. Tyler, I see your note, and oh, that's right. Thank you, Tawny. Tawny, I love you. Anyone that is on the phone that needs to vote, please send your answer in the chat. So, Roberts, just reply. Send another chat to us with your answer to the polling question, and do that for every poll question. Thanks for everybody for helping us work through these first time glitches. We really appreciate it. I'm going to end the polling now. Just waiting for, of course, send it to the panelists, not to, that's okay. All right, I'm getting, okay. If you voted in the poll, you don't have to send us a chat too. It's only for people that are on the phone. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to end the polling and share the results. The majority of respondents got it correct, that it was D, all of the above. Okay. And Josh, I just want to make sure that you do not see the polling question on the screen anymore. Is that correct?
I still see the results.
Okay. Thank you to people who are putting questions about the content into the Q&A. And just another reminder for folks that are viewing the webinar, if you are able to send us, the panelists, a chat message, then you can send us a chat message with the answer to the polling questions. You don't need to be able to push something into your phone. So thank you to everybody for working through these glitches. For the person who just said they were on their phone and couldn't answer, I will try to send you another chat message once we get up with Stephen. So Stephen, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for being able to join us today from Delaware. I guess we're sort of, as far as we know in Massachusetts, we're lucky in that we don't have a active spotted lanternfly infestation to show people, but that also means we don't have an active infestation to show people. And I think it would be really useful for them to be able to see what's going on in a state like Delaware, where the nymphs have hatched from the egg masses, and you have a lot of work going on right now. So I think what I want to do is Josh needs to stop sharing his screen.
All right.
Okay. And Steven, you should be able to go. Have I thought this through? What I'm hoping is that you can, I'm going to hide non-video participants. Once you go on video, you should be able to take over the whole screen, Steven.
Okay, let me see. I keep hitting start video and it says you cannot start your video because the host has disabled it.
Okay, hold on. I said that you could do that. So, thank you again for dealing with this. Yet another technical glitch. Hold on. I'm going to just make you a co-host.
Okay. All
That
right,
should
let's
help.
see. Okay. All right. Hey, everyone. I am here. I'm on my name is Stephen House. I'm the Cooperative Agricultural Pest Survey Coordinator for the Delaware Department of Agriculture. Right now, I'm on a property in Wilmington. So we're right now about 20 miles south of Philadelphia, just to give you some idea of where we're located. And this is a property that we actually treated a few years ago, 2 years ago. And we're, as you can see, we're surrounded by giant trees of heaven. They're just all over the place. And we also have many smaller sapling tree of heavens. So I need to make this a little bigger because I can't see what I'm trying to look at. So I'm trying to, I hope this is
While
clear enough
Steven's
for
doing
you.
that, I'm going to quickly just remind everybody, yes, there's a Wilmington in Massachusetts, but he is talking about Wilmington, Delaware.
Yeah, so can you, are you able to see this line of insects on this leaf right now?
I can see one of the nymphs on the biggest leaf in the shot.
Yeah.
We're getting closer.
Yeah, getting closer. Okay, so there's one. You can see this is very hard because I didn't realize the screen was going to be so small on my end, and I apologize for that. But yeah, as you can see, so right now they are first instar nymphs, so they're very tiny. They might be a little difficult to see, and I'm not sure if this is coming in blurry or if it's pretty clear.
I can see them okay, but it's tough when you're moving around. So one thing might be like if you have something you can point at them with. The other thing would be if you can put your hand behind the branch and not have them flee. I don't know enough about their behavior.
Well, we could try that. So on this branch right now, you can see there's kind of a line of them on the stem running up, and they are just kind of sitting there right now. A few very small ones. And again,
it did go into focus for a second. If you could just use your third hand to point at them.
So we can see them. They should be right here. There's a line of 3 of them right there. They're very small, and yeah, it's kind of coming like in and out of focus.
If you put something solid colored behind where they are, it will help focus better than the mixed greenery.
Right.
And I appreciate your patience here, and I appreciate our audience's patience as well.
No, I wish I would have had an opportunity to test this out, but I've been so busy. So let's see if putting it against my my vest here. So as you can see there, like I said, there's a kind of a line of them right there, and they are kind of going in and out of focus, but they're pretty small. So that is very unfocused. There they go. They're kind of crawling away.
They don't seem very disturbed by the fact that you're there. Like a lot of true bugs would just hop away
Yeah.
or fall to the ground.
So I could try showing you a few other things. So I found a few egg masses. So we could see there's some on this fallen log. So you can see there's an egg mass right there. This is an egg mass up here. There's a few more down here on this. They really try to protect their egg masses, so it's not uncommon to see them down low under fallen branches and things like that. And they're all over the place. A lot of them are much higher up. I'm not sure if you can. Yeah, I don't really have a zoom feature right now on this iPad, so we'll go back to the spotted lanternfly nymphs, and just about any tree of heaven sapling that I come across has at least a few nymphs on them right now. So you can see there's a few of those black spots right there on this branch. Let's see, here's a few more.
Is this typical of what you would be seeing at this time of year in this area of
Yes.
Delaware?
Yeah, so I'm not really surprised. We started seeing them hatching out. We started seeing a few nymphs about 2 weeks ago, and we have still been finding a lot of unhatched egg masses. So not really surprised. It's still, I think it's a little early to really see. Plus they're, just because they're first instar nymphs.
That looks great, by the way.
Yeah, since they're first instar nymphs, they're just like a little harder to find than when they're larger, fourth instar and adult stages. This place, once they're adults, this property right here is going to be totally covered in them. So.
And are you at this site to survey, to treat, or to both?
Right now, this is kind of like a follow-up. I knew when we had treated this site 2 years ago, we saw a lot of nymphs. It's not exactly a priority property for us right now, even though there are so many nymphs present. Our goal is to primarily treat properties that are adjacent to transportation, transportation like businesses, high places where there's a high risk of transporting them. And this property itself is kind of out in the middle of nowhere, not a high risk of transporting them from here to, say, another property. But I knew because we were so close to Pennsylvania that I was really looking for a good show for you guys. So I knew this property would not disappoint. Like I said, I'm just moving from tree of heaven to tree of heaven, and they're just covered in them.
Okay, yeah, that looks. Thank you for adding the orange. That's helping us a lot. One more quick question, and then I think we need to go back so that we can cover everything we need to cover on time. Is Delaware doing treatments? And if they are, can you briefly say what they're doing and what they're treating with? Oh, that's a lot of garlic mustard there too.
Oh yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess back here. Yeah, so we are treating. For the past few years, we've been working with a contractor and doing systemic insecticide treatments with dinotefuran. Oh, this one's pretty covered in them. So systemic insecticide treatments with dinotefuran, and we would be killing these young saplings if we were to come back with Garlon. to kind of remove them as host material. This year, we're moving more to a bifenthrin. Not this time of year. We're still treating with Safari as a systemic insecticide. When the adults start to emerge, we're going to move significantly towards a contact insecticide to kill the adults, just because of timing and all that. The treatment with Dinotefion, the systemic treatment, just becomes a little less effective towards the end of the year. Plus, it's expensive. So, yeah, our program is moving more to that contact insecticide treatment.
Thank you.
And yeah.
And thank you for doing the live demo, because like I said, we wouldn't be able to show anybody anything way up in Massachusetts, and the hatch hasn't happened in Connecticut yet.
Yeah. So. And like I said, right now they're really small. So even though it's a little hard to see what they're doing.
Oh, we can see them under those branches though. But I mean, look, that's exactly the point, right? They're hard to see at this stage, and it's important for our attendees to know that.
Yeah, and it's not impossible, you know. Like once you go out and you get some experience looking at them, they really start jumping out at you. So,
all right, I think at this point we are going to go back to the presentation. So, Stephen, we'd have you end your video. Thank you. Stephen, you are more than welcome to stay on and help with the Q&A at the end, but I totally understand if you need to go.
Yeah, well, we'll see what we can do. I think I've been on this property, and I was kind of assessing it to see how the treatments took. So I'll stay on for a little bit.
Okay, cool. And we might want to poke you for some updates at our summer webinar as well. So keep an eye out for an email from me.
Sure.
All right, I'm going to mute myself, and Josh, hand the mic back to you.
All right, yeah, thank you very much for that, Stephen. So I think that was very valuable. So we could get it's very helpful to have like the video instead of just like pictures, because it gives you a great sense of scale and also what they look like in movement, kind of what to look for. So this leads perfectly into our next section of what you should look for right now. Obviously, that's nymphs. As Stephen and Jen were just saying, they're hatching in Delaware and kind of the warmer southern states. They haven't hatched yet in Connecticut or Massachusetts. If there are indeed egg masses in Massachusetts, that's what we're trying to find out. We haven't had quite enough growing degree days to get there, but right now you want to look for those first instar nymphs. Again, very small, but like the adults, they tend to swarm. They will kind of gather on whatever host plant they're feeding off of in large numbers. So it's not like looking for like one tiny little black insect somewhere. There's going to be a couple of them. Look on the underside of the leaves, look on the stems, and the early instar nymphs are going to be active from about now through most of the summer until the fourth instar nymphs, the large red ones, are active about August or maybe even late of September. But right now you want to look for those nymphs. And again, here's some still photos of what they look like. It's kind of somewhat larger swarm than what we saw in the video. But here it looks like they're on roses. Tree of Heaven obviously is the first place you'd want to look when you're surveying. But they like rose as well. And again, look at them kind of marching in those little lines like that. You get a good sense of the scale of them. And as we saw, there were egg masses in the video. You want to look for egg masses. Maybe not quite as high priority, especially because, again, in Massachusetts, we do not have a confirmed established population. So we don't know if there's any egg masses. Again, that's kind of part of our survey effort to see if any adults have laid egg masses. But you should check as well. Check any flat surface, not just host trees or Tree of Heaven. The egg masses, if they're out this time of year in Massachusetts, are going to look like they are on the photo on the left. They're covered with this gray substance that the female secretes. Kind of looks like dried, cracked mud. When they're fresh and new, they're kind of look more like putty, but they're going to be kind of dried and cracked looking. And you want to look at basically any flat surface. Check out this guide on the right side. from Pennsylvania that shows places they found other egg masses, such as outdoor light bulbs, cushions on outdoor lawn furniture, fence posts, tires, undersides of planter boxes, camping equipment, basically anywhere. Definitely want to start with tree of heaven and other plants, but look basically anywhere. So the host plants that you'd want to check for right now if you're surveying a property or your own backyard or a business, maybe a nursery, start with tree of heaven always. This is the main host plant of spotted lanternfly in all of its life stages. Some earlier research, kind of when we were first really learning about spotted lanternfly, suggested it was critical for their life cycle. But recent studies have shown that spotted lanternfly can complete their life cycle on trees besides tree of heaven, such as black cherry or black walnut. But if there's tree of heaven in the area, they will find it. They will go after it. So if there's tree of heaven, like on a property you're surveying or near a nursery, near where you're surveying, near where you're working, definitely check there first. Black walnut and other walnut trees are also favored hosts. Grapevine, grape is a huge host of spotted lanternflies. So this can be wild grape as well as cultivated grape. So definitely vineyards, are a place to check if you're working near a vineyard, or just know how to identify wild grape, because you might just find that in a woodlot somewhere. Some other common hosts that the nymphs will go after are blueberry bushes, rose, all species, including the invasive multiflora rose, basil plant, maple trees, again, all species of maple, raspberry bushes, cherry trees, Virginia creeper, the vine. So the nymphs do have a very, very broad range of hosts, and they do, of course, like tree of heaven, but they favor kind of softer, more succulent plants, or the softer parts of plants, as we saw in that video. They're going after the stems and the leaves of the tree of heaven, which are much easier for their smaller proboscises to pierce and suck sap out of. When they get larger, their proboscises are strong enough to pierce through bark. The adults do show greater favoritism for tree of heaven and grape, which the nymphs again will go after, but check these other hosts as well. Check the any like basil or other herbs you have in your garden, roses, blueberry bushes, etc. But start with the tree of heaven and the grape, I would say. Just some photos in case you need references. So tree of heaven has some pretty distinct leaf shapes. They have compound leaves and kind of this broad fan shape, a very distinct kind of rancid peanut butter smell when you crush those leaves. Black walnut again has the compound leaves, kind of the diamond shape, the diamond furrowed bark, common amongst a lot of nut trees. And then grapevine has that sort of shredded looking papery bark to its surface and some distinct looking leaves. So know how to identify those hosts. This map right here shows the municipalities in Massachusetts where we have found spotted lanternfly. Again, these are not established populations. These were sightings of individuals. Most of them were dead. The first one was in Boston in 2018. The rest of them, I believe, were all from 2020. So that was a big year for finding spotted lanternfly. We have found them in 16 communities so far. Those are Billerica, Boston, Chelmsford, Chilmark, Concord, Dartmouth, Hadley, Leominster, Ludlow, Milford, Northborough, Norwood, Sharon, Wrentham, and Woburn. And again, since these are not established populations, these lanternfly were all shipped up to Massachusetts by accident on something that was sent up. But I can tell you the one in Boston was found, and that was found in 2018, was on a potted poinsettia that was sent from a greenhouse or nursery in Pennsylvania. Single dead adult that was on the potted plant was found in a garden center or grocery store when it got here. That's kind of all it takes is, something sent from a state with an infestation. Maybe it's not checked thoroughly. And then if it manages to get into the wild, lay its eggs, we could have an infestation on our hands. So gives you an idea of how quickly and easily this thing can spread and become established. For this section, we're going to go a bit into the survey efforts that we're doing for spotted lanternfly. So we've selected over 50 sites across the state that we've determined to be at high risk for spotted lanternfly, where we're going to be doing survey. What do we do to determine if a site is high risk? Couple things. One, if there's a presence of tree of heaven, again, main host tree. Two, if there's a presence of a business receiving or importing goods from an infested area, maybe it's a trucking business or kind of just a city or an area that does a lot of shipping and importing, getting a lot of things from like Pennsylvania and Delaware, or if there's an agricultural commodity or crop that's at high risk from lanternfly feeding, vineyards, orchards, anything that grows other vegetables or fruit, but especially grape. So lanternfly, again, lays eggs on basically any flat surfaces, which means trucking routes, highways, and cars are very high risks for pathways. So that means major roadways or highways that go in and out of the state are vectors for infestation and are considered high risk. Even if these areas outside the state, like in Pennsylvania, Delaware, et cetera, are doing everything they can and they're under compliance, following all the local regulations, using pesticides if that's allowed to deal with lanternfly. As we saw that video from Delaware, or in the video in the beginning from Pennsylvania, some areas have such a high population level that even pesticide treatments aren't going to eliminate all the adults. We could still be getting, accidentally be importing lanternfly from an area in Pennsylvania that's doing treatments. So railways and trucking centers can be a significant threat to to the health of the state. So for surveying, the way the survey works is we walk between Tree of Heaven, we record the Tree of Heaven and other host trees using the ArcGIS collector app. Trees are surveyed from the ground with binoculars on all four sides, checking for the presence of egg masses, nymphs, and adults. And again, that is all recorded in the app. For trapping, there's one of two methods that we would use for trapping. Each of the 50 sites will have a circle trap, which is what you see here. What this is quite simply a kind of a large piece of wire mesh that's wrapped around the tree, kind of like an envelope, so that if a nymph, the wingless nymph, is crawling up the tree, they have this instinct to climb up trees so they can get to the leaves and the stems that are easier for them to feed on. They're going to get trapped in that wire mesh that's wrapped around the tree, and it's going to funnel them up into this either a plastic bag or a jar or jug, where they're going to remain, where they can be collected and dealt with. And these pests, or these traps, will have a generalized pest lure of methyl salicate, which is extracted from wintergreen, which is how you would lure the pest or the lanternfly in. The other thing that we could use is bug barriers. As you can see in the photo on the left, this was taken in the field. It's the clear substance you see wrapped around the cotton around the tree is a very sticky tape. So again, like with the circle traps, if the nymph is trying to climb up the tree, they'll get stuck on the sticky tape, which lets us kind of collect them. And the reason we use the sticky tape thing kind of facing inward rather than sticky tape facing outward is this means larger animals like squirrels and birds won't get stuck there by accident. All traps, circle traps, and the circle barrier sticky traps are checked bi-weekly for any presence of spotted lanternfly or other insects. And again, we're prioritizing Tree of Heaven as places to put these traps. Quick little bit of information about CAPS survey. So that's the Cooperative Agricultural Pest Survey effort, which is simply a network of cooperative surveying effort from experts at federal and state agencies, from some tribal governments, university partners, and other stakeholders surveying for pests that maybe are not high priority yet or have not yet been established in the United States. So it's kind of a early warning, preventative measure sort of thing. So the kind of, of course, the earlier such an invasive plant or pest can be detected, the faster we can react to it, the better we can safeguard agriculture and the economy. With some pests that we're still dealing with, such as gypsy moth or Asian longhorn beetle, where it's took us a while to sort of get a response in place. Kind of the longer it takes to respond to a pest, the harder and longer it takes to deal with it. So the more proactive we can be, the faster we can deal with these certain pests. So this year, MDR is focusing mainly on pests of pine and conifers at 30 different CAP sites, including tree farms and nurseries and forested parks, including 24 different orchard sites. Now, pine and conifer are not really hosts of plants of spotted lanternfly. They do sometimes feed from them, and they will certainly lay their eggs on conifers. We've had them, we do check Christmas trees that are imported on moves for signs of lanternfly eggs, but they do not usually feed off of them. CAPS, though, is surveying or doing visual surveys for spotted lanternfly and trapping for the insects you can see on the left: the mason pine moth, pine processionary moth, pine sawfly, brown spruce longhorn beetle, and black spruce beetle. So that survey program, again, focused on conifers. Part of the CAPS monitoring program, though, does include the SLF survey, and we'll be inspecting for, SLF host species, especially tree of heaven, at these survey sites. So we're kind of making sure we're covering all of our bases. And if a site's determined to be of high risk for lanternfly, we'll put up a trap. Simple as that. Again, currently the greatest risk to spread from spotted lanternfly is long-range transportation and shipping. So that would be more specifically like high traffic rails, high volume shipping operations and cooperators, high risk industries, which would include the green industry, nurseries, outdoor goods. Nurseries are definitely a huge thing we want to check for because they often ship plants and supplies from other states. High value agricultural commodities such as grapes, fruit trees, and Christmas trees, again, could be a vector for the eggs. Other things that we would be looking at are certain cities and rest stops and gas stations on major transport paths, especially if there are major hubs for shipping, ports of entry into the state, in areas near these high traffic or high risk areas that have tree of heaven. So some areas in the state that we are looking at and targeting as high risk areas where some of the survey might take place, or we might be putting traps, or targeting for outreach and advertisement to kind of raise awareness would be the Springfield area, the Worcester area, Boston, New Bedford, Fall River, and Pittsfield. So again, if you are in these communities or you're working in a business that's near them, or you're doing something near them and there's high risk factors, you might want to check them out. Make sure you're looking for spotted lanternfly, especially the nymphs, this time of year if you're in any of these areas. And we have another poll question now. So Jen, if you could get that up. And again, remember, if you're taking this course for credits, please make sure you answer this poll question. And if you're on your phone, you would want to put that into the chat box so we can see your answer.
So the question is being blocked by my volume window. Hold on. What are the current SLF control methods employed in Massachusetts? Is it broadcast pesticide application? Is it pesticide injections in the host tree? Is it visual surveys and traps? Or is it preventing host materials from entering the state? And just a reminder, if you are not able to explicitly click on the poll, then you can put your answer into the chat. Send it to the panelists only, not the attendees. Actually, I don't think anyone can send to attendees but me. So, all right, we've got about 71% of our audience participated. Going to leave this up for another few seconds. I'm waiting to see. I'm not seeing answers in the chat from folks that said they couldn't answer before. So, someone else. Oh, someone has said, thank you, Robert. So for phone answers, you can double tap on the poll label in the top corner. I'm assuming you mean smartphone, not dial-in phone. So anybody using a dial-in phone as the way that they had to connect today, drop us an email if you have any issues. But anyway, Robert has said you can double tap on the poll label in the top corner to do the poll. So thank you. That's a good tip. To cut and paste that to put into our presentation for next time. All right, we've got 85% voted. Going to keep this open for another few seconds. Josh, we're at 10:54, so hopefully you're set with your content. Are we pretty close to the third poll question?
We are, yes. The end part might go a little bit quicker, but yeah, we should be on pace to finish on time by 11:10, I'd say.
All right, and Robert Bankowski, I'll take your chat as verification. Don't worry about it. All right, I'm going to end the polling and share the results. So, Josh, what was the correct answer?
The correct answer was visual surveys and traps, which 71% of people responded with.
Yeah, I could see where people might pick preventing host materials from entering the state, but there are too many host materials for us to reasonably do that. All right, Josh, I'm going to retire that poll and let you keep going.
Okay. So the last part is going to be talking about actions that the attendees, can take. So very generally, for everyone here, things you can do. So one, learn to identify spotted lanternfly in all its life stages, which you've been doing, especially the nymphs. I think everyone knows how to identify those little early stage nymphs now. Great job. Two, you can trap any, save any lanternfly or eggs that you find on your property. If you find a nymph or an egg mass, put it in a jar or a bag, put it in your freezer, and you'd want to let MDAR know so we can inspect it right away. Check your vehicles or your outdoor equipment, or anything else, things that you're importing from other states for signs of lanternfly and their eggs. Check host plants that you're working with or on your property for signs of lanternfly, especially tree of heaven, and those other plants that the nymphs like. Acquire and distribute outreach materials to colleagues and clients. We'll get to that in the next slide. Make sure you're spreading information to people in relevant fields or people you work with, neighbors, friends, and make sure you know where to report anything that you find. So more specific for different industries, things you can do. One, check goods and nursery stocks or host plants imported from other states, especially states with known infestations like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware. Make sure you keep logs of where nursery stock is imported from and sold to in case backtracing is necessary. Maybe we'll get a case where someone finds a lanternfly in some city and you'll have a log and say, hey, I sold some maple saplings to someone in that city. So you'll be able to check your stock to see if you got anything from an infested state, or maybe you, it just might be good for information record keeping. Make sure you keep up to date on other states' lanternfly quarantines and policies, especially if you're doing business with those states. It might be useful to take the compliance training courses from Pennsylvania or New Jersey, just so you're kind of up on the most recent information and actions to take. And do make sure to regularly check your vehicles and equipment for signs of lanternfly and egg masses. Again, pretty much any flat surface, you want to check for those signs. These two documents here are especially useful. And if you go to our fact page, which is right there at the bottom, it's massnrc.org/pests/SLF. You can download, print, and make use of these documents. So the first is a best management practice document for nurseries and landscapers. Kind of gives you some ways to conduct business and make sure you're not spreading lanternfly. And the other is a best management practice and checklist for people in the transportation and moving industry. So some on the back side, there are some like visual indicators, things you can look at, but the front side of that checklist is materials that you want to look for if you're things that you might move or interact with in a transportation or moving business. These are great documents to have or to share with people you know. And again, you can download them and print them for free from our website right down there. Maybe Jen, if you want to put that link into the chat box so people can easily access it. And remember, MDAR state agents aren't trying to shut down a business if we're ever questioning a business or interacting with them. We're trying to help them out as much as possible rather than coming to be difficult. No method or control plan is going to be applicable in all situations. So whatever they're doing in Pennsylvania might not be applicable here based on how bad an infestation gets or what we find. And of course, we'll be updating at future webinars with information that's relevant to that time period if things change. So this little guide shows you kind of according to the National Operations Guide, the best treatment at different times of year for spotted lanternfly. Again, nymphs are active this time of year. And although we're not doing systemic insecticide treatments this time of year like other states are, we are certainly doing trapping and population monitoring and seeing what we can find. Again, this time of year, you can certainly scrape and smash any egg masses you find, but reporting them is very useful. Want to make sure you're not moving any life stages, the eggs or the nymphs, and check those host trees as well. So we're almost at the end, so we should be not going too far past 11 o'clock. But for pesticide regulations, because we usually get questions about these, of course, Massachusetts is not currently using pesticides to deal with spotted lanternfly because, again, we do not have an established population. But they are being used as population control in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, as we heard in the video. Again, as Stephen told us, dinotephorins and bifenthrins are the most effective pesticides to use as kind of what's being used in the field right now. The adult lanternfly are sensitive to basically any chemical pesticide, but have shown the most sensitivity to dinotephorins, so that's what's being used. Some places are using soybean-based ovicides as well on the eggs. A little late for that, as we've seen, at least in like Delaware and Pennsylvania and other southern states. And aerial applications of the pesticides have shown higher success rates in ground-based sprays. So if there's ever a treatment or pesticide program in Massachusetts, that might be kind of what it starts to look like. We have one more poll question, and I think we are basically done. We should still have time for Q&A. So Jen, if you want to get that last poll question up on the screen.
Okay, last poll question. What is the best current strategy for dealing with SLF in Massachusetts? Is it 1, pesticides, 2, education, outreach, and awareness, 3, removing all the tree of heaven, or 4, breeding biocontrols? All right, we've got about 91% of folks voting. I'm waiting for, oh yeah, I forgot that one guy figured out how to vote, so he doesn't need to put it in the chat anymore. All right, give it another 5 seconds. Okay, so Josh, you want to take it from here?
Yep, so 98% of respondents said education, outreach, and awareness, which is the correct answer. It is what we are doing in Massachusetts right now. I did not get a chance in this talk to talk about biocontrols, which is a very, very interesting subject, but I suppose not really relevant to what we're doing here now. But we might be able to talk about that in a future presentation. All right, so last thing. So some important links for you that you can make use of. So our pest website is on the left there. You can see massnrc.org/pests, and our spotted lanternfly back page is the same thing, but with a /SLF on the end. So definitely want to start our Lanternfly back page for some links to good information, other websites, resources. You can find a good landing page there. That also has our reporting form, our all-important reporting form. So if you think you have found a spotted lanternfly egg or nymph or other life stage, you would definitely want to take a picture and go to our reporting form on the back page to let us know about it. You can follow us on Twitter at MassPests for updates and information to any articles we have, relevant information we think you should know. And if you would like to order any Lanternfly outreach materials, including and especially ID cards, which have a link to our reporting form on them. They have pictures of the life stages, and they're the size of a credit card, so you can keep them in your wallet or your pocket. You'd want to go to this link right here, which we can put in the chat for you to make use of. So next steps, obviously if you want any of those materials, like those fact pages, the best management practice, the checklist, you can go to our fact page and download them. You can go to that link, that bit.ly link, and order ID cards or the materials you want. Our next webinar in the series is going to be on Tuesday, August 17th, 2021 at 10 a.m. The link to register is right there. And once again, if you are taking that, if you're going to take that talk for pesticide credits, you will have to give us your pesticide license number, address, email address. And once again, if you are taking this talk for credits, but have not given us the relevant information yet, please make sure you email that to me. My email is joshua.bruckner@mass.gov, and make sure you send us your mailing address, your email address, and your Massachusetts pesticide license number.
Although I will note, since we had well over 100 registrants for this, if you put your pesticide license number into the registration form, you don't need to send it again unless there's some kind of an issue. All right, so thank you so much, Josh, for getting through that in a timely manner. There's a few questions. We won't have time to answer all the questions, and I did answer some of them in advance. So you can go to the Q&A tab and look at what's been answered to see that. But there are a few that I thought would be good. So Robert asked, are infestations directly correlated to Atlantis populations? So in other words, if we don't have Atlantis, on our property, are our chances of infestation reduced? So Josh, do you want to answer that?
Yeah. So as I said, if there is a tree of heaven or Atlantis on a property, spotted lanternfly are going to be drawn to that. That's why we put our traps on tree of heaven. But if there is no tree of heaven around, that doesn't mean an area is going to be safe from spotted lanternfly. Again, they do go after other plants. They can complete their life cycle on other host trees such as black cherry or black walnut or maple. I suppose if an area has a much higher percentage of tree of heaven, it might expect to have more lanternfly if there's a bad infestation. But again, if a place cuts down all its tree of heaven, it will not be safe from spotted lanternfly. That's something that's been discussed before, and the research now shows that is not the case.
Okay, so another question. Sorry, I lost it. Give me 1 second here. So someone asked, how are high-risk sites determined? This must be in reference to survey site selection. So they want to know what the criteria are for determining what makes a site high risk.
Yeah, I think we kind of went through that part of the presentation quickly, but a couple different factors are looked at. One, presence of tree of heaven is important. Two, presence of other high risk or high value agricultural commodities such as grape or apple. If an area is near a business that does shipping or gets things from out of state, especially like Pennsylvania and New Jersey, because they'd be at high risk of accidentally transporting spotted lanternfly. Or if a place is near kind of a hub or an area that is considered high risk, like a major transportation hub, a city that gets a lot of materials imported in. We had that list of cities in the state that we're kind of looking at as high risk areas, or if it's near a major transportation highway, and especially one that goes in and out of the state.
Okay, thank you. And if Stephen, I know you're still on the call, but if you're still able to pay attention, because I know you're out in the field, we had a good question that I thought you might want to weigh in on, which is Anthony was asking, are the pesticides applied by aerial spray or some other means of application? First of all, it is not by aerial spray. And second of all, we are not applying any pesticides currently in Massachusetts, but since Stephen is actually in a state where I believe they're doing pesticide treatments, maybe he can speak to the details of it.
Sure. So the pesticides are applied. So for the past few years, we've been doing two different chemical treatments. One to kill the insects with systemic insecticide applied directly to individual trees of heaven with a backpack sprayer. The Garland treatment that we use on smaller tree of heaven to kind of remove them as a food source, we also apply directly to the trees with a squirt bottle, like a handheld squirt bottle, but by a hack and squirt method. So you cut a notch in the bark of the tree and squirt a small amount of Garland into that notch, and it gets absorbed into the tree, and the tree eventually dies over the course of a few weeks. So those are all applied on foot by hand directly to individual trees. Currently, I don't want to say too much because I'm not a USDA officer, but my understanding is the USDA program is really pushing eventually to move towards a more broadcast spraying from like the back of a truck with a mister application. I don't think we're not planning on doing that this year, but that's another option for some places. Right now, they're getting approval to do that. So the program isn't currently doing that, but they're moving in that direction using more broadcast type spraying to cover a large area quickly instead of going tree by tree. But yeah, not aerial.
And I apologize if you mentioned this at the beginning. Are you doing any egg mass treatments? What is that called? Golden oil?
Yeah, so we did this year do that too. So golden pest spray oil, it is an organic soybean oil. It's soybean oil, so it's organic, and you spray it to the egg mass. We did participate in a study this year. So the Otis lab was looking for states to help with this study. So we went out, we found properties with a large number of egg masses, and we kind of divided them up into some control egg masses where we did not spray them, and some were the experimental egg masses where we did spray them. So this is just to collect data on the efficacy of that treatment in the future. So yeah, we haven't followed up on those sites yet because we're not 100% sure that all egg masses are hatched. So in the beginning of the summer, we'll go back and collect that data and see if that treatment was effective. The thinking is that it is, but we're just trying to collect more data on that. Mostly we've been going out. We do actually physically scrape egg masses when we find them too. But if this golden oil proves to be very effective, well, we'll be doing that in the future.
Thank you so much, Stephen. One quick thing, and then I think we'll have to officially end it, but we can try to stay on for a few more minutes if people have more questions. Just somebody was asking how Massachusetts is collecting data for sites that are positive for lanternfly. So I put a link to our website reporting form into the chat. If you ever see any suspicious egg masses or nymphs or adults, please use that form to let us know. We also proactively monitor citizen science data collection sites like iNaturalist and EDD Maps, so that if people find things and report it that way, that we can flag it and respond that way. And then we also get, we combine that with reports that we have that come in from our staff that are out doing surveys. Let's see. Okay. I think, it's 11, well, we said 11:15, right, Josh?
Yep, we did.
Okay. All right. So let's take a couple more questions. I need to answer. Okay. I need to set you off on a question and then answer somebody else. So somebody asked, do SLF remain on the same host plant, or do they jump to different species over their life cycle for more favorable species at certain times? Can you answer?
Ooh, that's a good question. I feel like I've seen research topics and presentations about something like this. I think they will move from one, not necessarily, they will again gravitate towards tree of heaven if it's in the area. But I think they will mostly move from one plant to the other if a plant gets too crowded. But I don't think they move around too much as adults, except when it comes time to mate and lay eggs, they'll start seeking out a viable mate. This is kind of a tough one. I'm not,
Well, here,
on this,
wait,
but yeah.
I sort of feel like you were the one telling me that you had just seen something that was sort of more about the nymphs being less picky.
The nymphs are less picky when it comes to feeding. So I think the adults will gravitate towards things like tree of heaven, grape, and maple. In their adult stages to feed on. So there might certainly be movement in the older life stages towards plants that are more favorable to them, which possibly is where they will also lay their eggs.
Okay, and someone had a quick question about, and I think this was in the talk, but it should be quick. How many eggs are in the egg mass?
That was not in our talk, but it's usually about 50 to 70 eggs per egg mass, and the female can lay up to 2 egg masses in their lifetime.
Okay. And there's someone else that was asking, is there any difference between the egg masses of lanternfly and gypsy moths, e.g. the eggs themselves? I'm not sure we're going to be able to answer this the way you want us to. In terms of the way they look quite different, both when they're covered and uncovered. And the person who asked this, I'm going to dig up blog posts that you can look at that shows the difference between the two. And I'll put it in the chat. Are there any insects that will eat spotted lanternfly? Josh, I don't know of any right now that that are native to that are in Massachusetts that would eat them. I know that they're not native, but there's definitely photo evidence of praying mantises eating them, but most of the praying mantises we have in Massachusetts anyway are not native. So, and birds will eat them, but they're not eating them to the point where they're decreasing populations.
Right.
Any sexual dimorphism, so any difference between the males and the females, so you can tell them apart. Josh, are you able to answer that one?
I think the females might be slightly larger, and the females do get that yellow banded abdomen when they're gravid. The males can get them too when they're older and kind of ready to mate, but I think it's more pronounced on the female. Other than that, I don't think there's a huge amount of variation between the males and females.
Oh, this
I
is Steven.
agree. Go for it.
Yeah, as a one thing that you can use to tell the difference is besides the size. I don't know exactly what the structure is called, but there's a structure. I don't know if it's like part of their genitals or something that is visible on the outside, but there's a spot on the bottom rear of the spotted lanternfly, and on females it's red. On males it's black. So that's something that you can also use. It's just like a little interesting little fact. But yeah, if you were to look at a spotted lanternfly when they're sitting on like a tree without picking them up and looking for that structure, I don't think you can really tell the difference.
Thank you. At this point, it's 11:16. So we've got a couple more questions in here, but I guess we're going to officially end the webinar. So you're welcome to stay on for the next couple of minutes to answer these last few questions. But otherwise, thank you so much for being here. We hope that you're going to join us for each of the quarterly updates. We hope we don't have a burgeoning spotted lanternfly infestation in Massachusetts, but as we do our surveys and get data, this is going to be the only place where you're going to be able to get the latest information about what's happening with lanternfly in our state. So thank you very much. All right, let's see. Someone asked about pesticide resistance, whether that's a possibility. Complicated question. I mean, that's always a possibility, but I didn't think, I mean, at this point, I don't know how frequently they're being treated with pesticide in the areas where the infestations are heavy. And I don't know whether Pennsylvania's testing pesticide resistance. Are they using any pyrethroids? I don't even know. What is bifenthrin? Stephen, feel free to weigh in if you know, but I don't know how high the risk is of pesticide resistance. I'm trying to type as I ask this. I mean, bifenthrin is a pyrethroid, so insecticide resistance is possibly an issue, but I don't think they're using bifenthrin that much because it's so.
Yeah, so
you know.
yeah, I don't know specifically about that. I haven't heard that they've been finding pesticide resistance. I'm sure someone is doing research on it, but I can't really speak to that either. But I do know that I think the program is in the future looking to move more towards bifenthrin than dinotefuran and neonicotinoids. And I don't know if that's just like, because they feel like they can go through a area faster using the contact insecticides. But yeah, so it is a concern. I think anytime we do this, it's a concern, but I haven't heard that they've experienced pesticide resistance yet.
Okay, thank you. Someone was asking about, the biocontrol. Like everyone would love to have another success story like purple loosestrife beetles in terms of, having a biocontrol, but it takes years for them to do that research. And the USDA is working on that, but they don't have anything that they're even testing at this point. I mean, we're still testing emerald ash borer biocontrols, and that pest has been around for years. It just takes a really long time to do it in a thorough and safe way that puts native species at minimal risk. So, but that's a good question. Somebody asked about the percentage of egg masses that hatch, and I do not know the question to that. Do you, Josh?
I don't think so. I don't think I've seen any research about that.
All right. Apologies for not having that answer at hand. We will try to find out and mention it at the next webinar. And then Robert asked if MDAR is working with any non-government groups to track SLF. We're currently not working directly with any NGOs on this. Maybe in part just because this pest has been spreading so far and so fast, we don't necessarily need to do that. Like I said, we do proactively monitor sites like iNaturalist that collect data like that from the public, but we're not working with any particular organizations. I mean, we'd love, if anybody's interested, we'd love to partner, but we have pretty limited resources. All right, I think that's it. So thank you to the 61 attendees that hung on this long. We really appreciate it. I'm gonna stop recording and